Nora Bennett stepped into the gleaming jewelry store in Los Angeles, her fingers brushing over a delicate pearl necklace on display. At 25, she carried the weight of her family's crumbling logging business in Seattle. The Bennetts were drowning in debt, and every decision felt like a desperate grab to keep them afloat. She had picked out the necklace as a gift for Derek Vaughn's mother, hoping it would soften the woman's heart. Derek, her secret boyfriend of 2 years, had promised to help her family, and Nora clung to that hope like a lifeline. As she admired the pearls, a voice interrupted her thoughts. "Nice choice, but I bet you can't afford it," it said, dripping with arrogance. She turned to see Colton Pierce, 27, leaning against the counter. His dark hair was messy, his shirt untucked, and his smirk screamed privilege. The Pierce family owned half the real estate in LA, and Colton was their infamous playboy heir. Nora's cheeks flushed. "Mind your own business," she snapped, clutching the necklace tighter. Colton chuckled, stepping closer. "Oh, I'm just saying, that's a 10 grand piece. You don't look like you've got that kind of cash." Her temper flared. She had heard about him, the spoiled rich kid who threw money at parties and fast cars. Before she could stop herself, her hand flew up and slapped him hard across the face. The sound echoed through the store, drawing gasps from nearby customers. Nora froze, expecting anger, but Colton just rubbed his cheek and grinned. "You've got fire," he said, his eyes glinting with something she couldn't place. "I like that." She stormed out, heart pounding, the necklace forgotten. Back in Seattle, Nora's world grew heavier. Her father sat her down at the kitchen table, his face lined with worry. "The company's done unless we get help," he said, voice low. "The Pierces could save us. You need to meet Colton, convince him to invest." Nora stared at him, incredulous. "You're joking. I'm not begging some arrogant jerk for money." Her father's eyes hardened. "You will, or we lose everything. The house, the business, all of it." Her mother nodded silently, and Nora felt the walls closing in. She had been banking on Derek, a young entrepreneur with a sharp smile and big promises. He had hinted at going public with their relationship soon, maybe even using his connections to bail out the Bennetts. But the memory of Colton's smirk lingered, and she hated that her family saw him as their only hope. The next day, Nora's phone buzzed with a text from her sister, Holly. "Dad's serious about this Pierce guy. Don't mess it up." Nora groaned, tossing the phone aside. She didn't want to admit it, but the slap in LA had left her rattled. Colton hadn't reacted like she expected. Most guys would have yelled or stormed off. But he just stood there, amused. It was unsettling. She tried to focus on Derek instead. He had invited her to his mother's birthday party in LA that weekend, and she planned to ask him for help then. If he came through, she wouldn't need Colton or his family's money. Still, her father's words echoed in her head, and she couldn't shake the dread creeping up her spine. Friday evening, Nora drove down to Los Angeles, the pearl necklace still on her mind. She hadn't gone back for it after the incident, but she hoped Derek would see her effort. As she parked outside the jewelry store to try again, she spotted Colton across the street, leaning against a sleek black car. He waved, that same infuriating grin plastered on his face. "Back for round 2?" he called out. Nora ignored him, marching inside. The necklace was gone, sold to someone else. Her stomach sank. She couldn't face Derek's mother empty-handed now. Colton sauntered in behind her, hands in his pockets. "Told you it was out of your league," he said. She spun around, fists clenched. "Why are you even here?" He shrugged. "Maybe I like the entertainment." Nora's patience snapped. "You're a spoiled brat who thinks money buys everything. Stay out of my life." She pushed past him, but his voice followed her. "You're the one who hit me, Nora. I'm just returning the favor by sticking around." She stopped, stunned that he knew her name. Before she could ask how, her phone rang. It was her father again. "Colton Pierce agreed to meet you tomorrow in Seattle," he said, his tone sharp. "Don't ruin this. We're counting on you." Nora hung up, glaring at Colton's retreating figure. She didn't know how he'd wormed his way into her family's plan, but one thing was clear. He wasn't going away. and deep down she wondered why that didn't bother her as much as it should. Nora Bennett stood outside a sleek Seattle cafe, her stomach twisting into knots. The morning air was crisp, but it did nothing to cool the frustration simmering inside her. She had driven back from Los Angeles the night before, still reeling from her run-in with Colton Pierce at the jewelry store. Now, she was here, at her father's command, forced to meet the very man she'd slapped just days ago. The cafe's glass doors reflected her tense expression as she smoothed her jacket and stepped inside. Colton was already there, sprawled in a leather chair with a coffee in hand, looking like he owned the place. His dark eyes flicked up to meet hers, and that familiar smirk spread across his face. "Well, if it isn't my favorite firecracker," he said, leaning back. "Didn't think you'd show." Nora gritted her teeth and sat across from him, keeping her voice low. "Let's get this over with. My family thinks you can save our company. I don't." Colton raised an eyebrow, sipping his coffee. "Straight to the point. I like that. What's the deal with your company, anyway?" She hesitated, hating that she had to explain herself to him. "Our logging business is failing. Debts are piling up. My father says the Pierces have the cash to bail us out." Colton tilted his head, studying her. "And you're here begging me because... What, you think I'm some knight in shining armor?" Nora's hands clenched into fists. "I'm not begging. I'm here because they won't let it go. You're a spoiled rich kid who wastes money on parties. You're not the answer." He laughed, a low sound that grated on her nerves. "You've got me all figured out, huh? Tell you what, I'll think about it, but only because you're more interesting than most people I meet." Nora stood, ready to leave, but his next words stopped her. "Your family's pretty desperate, Nora. I heard your dad on the phone with my mom. They're not giving you a choice." She froze, the weight of his words sinking in. Her father had gone behind her back, straight to Marilyn Pierce, Colton's mother. The betrayal stung, but she didn't let it show. "Just stay out of my life," she muttered, storming out. As she drove home, her mind raced. She didn't want Colton anywhere near her family's mess, but Derek Vaughn was her real hope. He had to come through. Back at the Bennett house, the pressure mounted. Her father paced the living room, his voice rising with every step. "You met Colton Pierce and didn't seal the deal? Nora, we're out of time. The bank's calling in the loans next month." Her mother sat silently on the couch, wringing her hands, while Holly, her younger sister, smirked from the doorway. "Maybe if you weren't so stubborn we wouldn't be in this mess," Holly said, flipping her hair. Nora glared at her. "Stay out of it, Holly." Her father slammed a hand on the table. "Enough. You're meeting Colton again, and you'll make this work. If you don't, we're finished. You hear me? Finished." Nora's chest tightened. She wanted to scream, but she nodded, knowing they wouldn't relent. That weekend, Nora headed back to LA for Derek's mother's birthday party, clinging to the slim chance he'd save them all. She had scraped together cash for a small gift, a silver bracelet, since the pearl necklace was gone. The party was at a swanky rooftop venue, all glittering lights and expensive wine. Derek greeted her with a quick kiss, his smile as charming as ever. "You look great," he said, guiding her inside. Nora forced a smile, her nerves jangling. She handed the bracelet to his mother, who gave a polite nod but no warmth. As the night wore on, Nora pulled Derek aside. "I need to talk to you about my family," she said, her voice shaky. "We're in trouble. Can you help us?" Derek's expression shifted, a flicker of unease crossing his face. "Let's not do this now," he said, brushing her off. "It's a party." Her hope faltered, but she pressed on. "You've been saying we'd go public soon. I need you now, Derek." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's complicated, Nora. We'll figure it out later." Before she could argue, he walked away, leaving her standing alone. Later, needing air, she slipped out to the balcony and froze. Through the glass doors, she saw Derek in a corner, his arms around another woman, their lips locked in a kiss. Her heart sank, the bracelet's wrapping paper crumpling in her fist. She stormed back inside, shoving through the crowd until she reached him. 2 years, Derek," she shouted, her voice cutting through the music. You've been lying to me this whole time? Derek pulled away from the woman, his face paling. Nora, it's not what you think. She cut him off, tears burning her eyes. Don't. We're done. The woman smirked, clinging to Derek's arm, and Nora turned away, the room spinning. As she stumbled toward the exit, a familiar figure blocked her path. Colton Pierce, glass in hand, watched her with a raised brow. Rough night? He asked, his tone lighter than the moment deserved. Nora wiped her eyes, refusing to break down in front of him. Leave me alone, she said, pushing past. But he followed her outside, his voice softer now. You okay? She whirled on him. Why do you care? You're just here to gloat. He shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe I don't like seeing people get hurt. Nora didn't respond, climbing into her car and driving off. The next morning, her father's voice boomed through the house again. Derek's out of the picture, Nora. I heard what happened. Now it's Colton or nothing. Her mother joined in, her tone pleading. We can't lose the house, honey, please. Holly lounged on the stairs, smirking. Looks like you've got no choice now, sis. Nora's head pounded. She had trusted Derek, built her hopes on him only to find out he'd been using her family's logging rights to impress his real girlfriend. And now, her family was shoving her toward Colton Pierce, the last person she wanted to rely on. That afternoon, Colton showed up at her doorstep uninvited, leaning against his car like he belonged there. Heard your boyfriend's a jerk, he said, tossing a pebble in the air. My mom's pushing me to meet you again, too. Guess we're both stuck. Nora crossed her arms. I don't need your pity. He caught the pebble, grinning. Good, because I don't do pity. But I'm not as useless as you think. Give me a shot to prove it. She stared at him, torn between her family's demands and her own pride. Derek's betrayal still stung, and Colton's cocky attitude didn't help. But as he stood there, waiting, she realized she was out of options. Fine, she said at last. One chance. Don't screw it up. Nora Bennett stood in the middle of a glittering Los Angeles ballroom, her hands clenched at her sides. The Pierce family had thrown a lavish party to announce a potential partnership with the Bennetts, but the air buzzed with tension. Colton Pierce lounged near the bar, chatting with a group of guests, his easy grin a stark contrast to Nora's stiff posture. She had agreed to meet him again, but only because her father's threats echoed in her ears. Colton or nothing, he had said, and the sting of Derek Vaughn's betrayal still burned fresh. As she scanned the room, her eyes landed on Derek himself, strutting in with the same woman from the birthday party clinging to his arm. Her stomach twisted. She hadn't expected him to show up here. Before she could retreat, Colton sauntered over, a glass of champagne in hand. You look like you're about to punch someone, he said, his tone teasing. Let me guess, it's me again. Nora glared at him. Not you, him. She nodded toward Derek, who was now laughing loudly with a cluster of businessmen. Colton followed her gaze, his smirk fading. The ex, huh? Want me to spill this on him? Nora almost smiled, but she caught herself. Just stay out of it. He shrugged. Suit yourself. But you're stuck with me tonight, so try not to slap me again. She rolled her eyes, but his presence felt oddly steadying as Derek's laugh grated on her nerves. The night took a turn when Derek swaggered over, his date trailing behind. Nora, he said, his voice dripping with fake charm. Didn't think you'd stoop to hanging out with a guy like Pierce. Guess you're desperate now that I'm done with you. The words hit like a slap, and Nora's face flushed with anger. Before she could fire back, Colton stepped forward, his grin replaced by a hard edge. Funny, Vaughn. Last I checked, you're the one sniffing around for scraps. Nora's worth 10 of you, and you're too dumb to see it. Derek's smirk faltered, but he recovered quickly. Keep dreaming, Pierce. She's just a charity case for your family. Nora's fists tightened, but Colton's hand brushed her arm, a silent signal to hold back. Walk away, he said to Derek, voice low. Before I make you. Derek scoffed, but retreated, pulling his date along. Nora turned to Colton, surprised. Why'd you do that? He shrugged, sipping his drink. Didn't like his face. Plus, you look like you needed backup. She studied him, caught off guard by the flicker of sincerity in his eyes. The moment was cut short when Marilyn Pierce, Colton's mother, swept over, her elegant dress rustling. "Nora, dear, we need to talk," she said, guiding her to a quiet corner. "Our families could benefit from a closer tie. Colton's a handful, but he's got potential. Marry him and we'll save your company." Nora blinked, stunned. "Marry him? That's insane." Marilyn smiled thinly. "It's practical. Think about it." Back home in Seattle, Nora faced a storm. Her father slammed the table as she relayed Marilyn's offer. "You're marrying Colton Pierce, Nora. No arguments. We're out of time." Her mother nodded, tears in her eyes. "It's for all of us, honey," Holly smirked from the couch. "Guess you're stuck with the rich brat now, sis." Nora's head spun. She didn't want this, didn't trust Colton, but Derek's betrayal had left her with no fallback. The next day, she met Colton at a park, away from prying eyes. "Your mom's pushing this marriage thing," she said, voice flat. He nodded, kicking a pebble. "Yeah, mine too. Wants me to grow up. So, what's your deal?" Nora took a deep breath. "If we do this, it's a contract. We marry, your family bails out mine, and we divorce when your company goes public. No strings." Colton grinned. "A business deal with a wedding cake. I'm in." The wedding was a blur, held in a small LA chapel with only family. Nora wore a simple dress, her jaw tight as she said her vows. Colton winked at her during the "I do," earning a glare. That night, they moved into a sleek, Pierce-owned apartment, and the real work began. Nora took charge, dragging Colton to the office instead of his usual late-night haunts. "You're not partying while I'm saving your ass," she said, shoving a stack of papers at him. He groaned but complied, grumbling about her dictator vibe. Over weeks, she noticed a shift. He stopped complaining, started asking questions about the business, even stayed late to finish reports. One night, she caught him staring as she worked at the kitchen table, spreadsheets spread out. "What?" she snapped. He shrugged. "You're good at this." "Didn't expect that." Their fragile truce was tested by Holly. Nora's sister showed up at the apartment unannounced, batting her lashes at Colton. "You're wasted on her," Holly purred, brushing his arm. "I'd treat you better." Colton pulled away, laughing. "Nice try, kid. I'm taken." Holly's face soured and she stormed out, muttering threats. Nora watched, a mix of relief and unease settling in. "You didn't have to do that," she said. Colton grinned. "Yeah, I did. She's trouble." The next day, Nora overheard Holly on the phone with Derek, plotting something. "They won't last," Holly said. "I'll make sure of it." Nora's gut twisted, but she kept it to herself, focusing on the company instead. As months passed, Nora poured her energy into a new project. Evergreen Love Retreat, a resort in Oregon meant to boost the Pierce brand. Colton tagged along, more involved than she expected. One evening, after a long day at the site, she fell asleep at her desk, papers scattered around her. She woke to find a blanket draped over her shoulders, Colton gone. Her heart thudded, a strange warmth creeping in. The next morning, he acted like nothing happened, tossing her a coffee. "You snore, by the way," he said, smirking. She threw a pen at him, but a smile tugged at her lips. Their dynamic shifted again at a company gala. Nora, dressed in a sleek gown, stood beside Colton as he charmed investors. Derek appeared, smirking as he approached. "Still playing house?" he taunted. Colton's arm slid around Nora's waist, casual but firm. "Better than playing you?" he shot back. Derek's face darkened, but he backed off. Later, alone on the balcony, Nora turned to Colton. "You're not as useless as I thought." He grinned. "High praise from you." She looked away, her pulse quickening. The contract said no feelings, but something was stirring, and she couldn't deny it. Holly struck again, days later, spreading rumors online that Nora was cheating on Colton with Derek. The gossip hit the office hard, and Nora confronted her sister at home. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded. Holly sneered. "You don't deserve him. I do." Colton walked in, overhearing. "She's my wife, Holly. Back off." Holly flounced out, but the damage lingered. That night, Nora sat alone, staring at the contract papers. Colton joined her, quiet for once. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, voice soft. "Thanks for earlier." He leaned closer, eyes searching hers. "Any time." For the first time, the word divorce felt heavy on her tongue, and she wondered if he felt it too. Nora Bennett drove along the winding roads of Oregon, the lush greenery blurring past her window. The Evergreen Love Retreat project consumed her days, a sprawling resort she had pitched to save both the Pierce and Bennett families. Beside her, Colton Pierce fiddled with the radio, his usual smirk replaced by a focused frown as he reviewed site plans. Their contract marriage had settled into a rhythm over the past few months, a partnership built on necessity, but edged with something unspoken. Nora glanced at him, still surprised by how he had thrown himself into the work. The playboy she'd met in that LA jewelry store was fading, replaced by someone she almost trusted. Almost. Their progress hit a wall when Holly Bennett escalated her sabotage. Nora's sister had been quiet since the gala, but now she struck with venom. One morning, Nora opened her laptop to find a flood of emails from Pierce investors, all citing a tabloid article. "Wife of Pierce, heir caught in affair with ex," the headline screamed, complete with blurry photos of Nora and Derek Vaughn outside a coffee shop. She hadn't seen Derek since the breakup, but Holly had dug up old pictures and twisted them into a lie. Colton stormed into the apartment, his face tight. "This your sister's doing?" he asked, tossing his phone on the table. Nora scrolled through the article, her jaw clenching. "Yeah, she's working with Derek. I heard them planning something weeks ago." Colton paced, running a hand through his hair. "She's a piece of work." "What's her end game?" Nora sighed. "She wants you. Thinks if I'm out, she can swoop in." He stopped, meeting her eyes. "She's delusional. I'm not going anywhere." His words hung between them, heavier than they should have been for a contract. Nora pushed the thought aside, focusing on damage control. "We need to shut this down," she said. "The retreat's funding depends on your family's reputation." Colton nodded. "I'll call Lucas. He's good at fixing messes." Lucas Kane, Colton's childhood friend, was a sharp-witted lawyer who had stuck by him through his wild years. Within hours, Lucas had the article pulled and a retraction issued, but the whispers lingered. The real threat came days later. Colton and Nora were at the retreat site inspecting the half-built cabins when Jasper Pierce rolled up in a black SUV. Colton's cousin was all sharp suits and sharper smiles, his presence dripping with menace. "Nice little project," Jasper said, strolling over. "Too bad it's a waste of Pierce money." Colton squared his shoulders. "Back off, Jasper. This isn't your call." Jasper chuckled, eyeing Nora. "Marrying her was a dumb move, cousin. You're soft now. Grandpa won't like that." Nora bristled, but Colton stepped between them. "Say what you want about me, but leave her out of it." Jasper smirked and drove off, leaving a chill in the air. Nora frowned. What's his problem? Colton shrugged, but his jaw was tight. He's always wanted what's mine. That night, everything unraveled. Colton took the winding road back to their Portland hotel, Nora asleep in the passenger seat. A truck veered out of nowhere, slamming into their car with a deafening crunch. Glass shattered, metal twisted, and the world went black. When Nora came to, paramedics were pulling her from the wreckage, her head pounding. "Colton!" she screamed, spotting him motionless on a stretcher. At the hospital, doctors delivered grim news. He was in a coma, his chances uncertain. Nora sat by his bed, her hands shaking as she gripped his. "You can't leave me with this mess," she whispered, tears spilling over. Marilyn Pierce arrived, her face pale but composed. "He'll pull through," she said, though her voice wavered. "He has to." Days turned into weeks, and Colton didn't wake. Nora refused to leave his side, sleeping in the hospital chair until her back ached. The retreat became her lifeline, a way to keep going. She threw herself into it, hiring crews and securing funds, turning it into a standalone company to shield it from Pierce drama. Lucas visited often, bringing coffee and updates. "You're holding up better than I expected," he said one day, leaning against the doorframe. Nora forced a smile. Someone has to. He hesitated, then added, Colton would be proud. He talked about you a lot, you know. Her throat tightened, but she nodded, unable to reply. Behind the scenes, Colton wasn't as gone as everyone thought. He had woken days after the crash, his mind foggy but sharp enough to suspect foul play. The truck hadn't been an accident. With Lucas's help, he faked the coma, using a private doctor to keep it quiet. From a hidden room in the hospital, he pieced together evidence, his friend acting as his eyes and ears. Jasper's behind this, he told Lucas one night, voice hoarse. He wants me out so he can take over. Get me proof. Lucas dug into Jasper's finances, uncovering payments to a shady driver linked to the crash. Colton watched Nora through updates, her strength fueling his resolve. She's killing herself over this, Lucas warned. Tell her soon. Colton shook his head. Not yet. Jasper's still out there. Nora's world grew darker when Holly struck again. Her sister showed up at the hospital, all fake tears and tight hugs. I'm so sorry, Nora, she said, voice syrupy. If you need anything. Nora pulled away, eyes narrowing. Cut the act. I know you're with Derek. Holly's mask slipped, a sneer replacing the tears. You don't deserve Colton. He's better off without you. Nora's hand twitched, itching to slap her, but she held back. Get out, she said, voice cold. Holly flounced off, and Nora sank into the chair beside Colton's bed, exhausted. She didn't see Lucas slip away to report the encounter to Colton, who clenched his fists at the news. She's not breaking us, he muttered. The retreat neared completion, its cabins glowing under Oregon's misty skies. Nora stood on the porch of the main lodge staring at the sign, Evergreen Love Retreat. It was meant to symbolize lasting love, but her own felt fragile, tied to a man who might never wake. One night, alone in their apartment, she broke down, sobbing over the contract papers. I didn't sign up for this, she whispered, tracing his name. She didn't hear the door creak open, didn't see Colton slip in, his steps silent. He had escaped the hospital, driven by Lucas's latest find, a recording of Jasper hiring the driver. He paused, watching her cry, his chest aching. Nora sensed him before she saw him, a shadow in the dim light. She looked up, gasping as he stepped forward, alive and whole. Colton? She choked out, stumbling to her feet. He caught her as she threw herself at him, her arms tight around his neck. I'm here, he said, voice rough. I'm sorry. She pulled back, tears streaming. You've been awake? Why didn't you tell me? He cupped her face, thumbs brushing her cheek. Jasper tried to kill me. I had to stay under, figure it out. Lucas helped. Nora's relief turned to anger, then back to relief, her emotions a tangle. You idiot, she said, hitting his chest lightly. I thought I lost you. He smiled, softer than she'd ever seen. You didn't. And I saw everything you did. The retreat, the company, all of it. You're incredible, Nora. She looked away, overwhelmed. I did it for us, for the deal. He tilted her chin up, eyes locking with hers. Bullshit, you did it for me. And I'm not letting you go. Before she could argue, he kissed her, slow and deep, the contract forgotten on the table. When they broke apart, gasping, Nora whispered, This doesn't change the deal. But her voice wavered and Colton grinned. We'll see about that. Nora Bennett stood in the finished lobby of Evergreen Love Retreat, the warm wood and soft lighting a testament to months of grueling work. Colton Pierce leaned against the reception desk beside her, his presence a quiet comfort after his return from the fake coma. The past week had been a whirlwind since he revealed the truth about Jasper's attack, and Nora still wrestled with the mix of relief and frustration swirling inside her. His hand brushed hers as they reviewed the guest list for the grand opening, a touch that sent a jolt through her. The contract still loomed between them, promising a divorce when the Pierce company went public, but neither had mentioned it since that night he kissed her. Their fragile peace shattered when Lucas Kane burst through the doors, his face grim. We've got it, he said, holding up a USB drive. Jasper's recording. He paid the driver to take you out, Colton. It's airtight. Colton took the drive, his jaw tightening. Good. Time to end this. Nora frowned, unease creeping in. What's the plan? He met her eyes, steady and sure. We take it to Grandpa Walter. Jasper's finished when he hears this. She nodded, trusting him, but a knot formed in her stomach. Jasper wasn't the only threat lurking. Holly and Derek had been too quiet lately, and she didn't like it. That afternoon, they drove to the Pierce family estate in Los Angeles, a sprawling mansion that screamed old money. Walter Pierce sat in his study, his white hair stark against the dark leather chair. Marilyn hovered nearby, her expression tense as Colton handed over the USB. "Listen to this," he said, voice hard. Walter plugged it into his laptop, and Jasper's voice crackled through the speakers, cold and deliberate. "Make it look like an accident. Colton's in the way." The old man's face darkened with every word, his hands gripping the armrests. When it ended, he looked up, eyes blazing. "That snake, he's no grandson of mine." Jasper arrived minutes later, summoned by Walter, oblivious to the trap. He strode in, smirking at Colton. "What's this, a family reunion?" Walter stood, his voice like thunder. "You tried to kill your own blood, Jasper. I heard every word." Jasper's smirk vanished, his eyes darting to the laptop. "That's fake," he stammered. "You can't prove." Walter cut him off. "It's over. You're out. Leave this house and never come back." Jasper's face twisted with rage, but he stormed out, slamming the door. Nora exhaled, relief washing over her, but Colton squeezed her hand. "One down," he murmured. She nodded, knowing Derek was still out there. Back at the retreat in Oregon, the grand opening loomed. Nora threw herself into final preparations, but a strange text rattled her focus. "Your dad's sick. Meet me at the back lot," it read, signed with her mother's name. Her heart raced. She hadn't spoken to her parents since the hospital days, and the timing felt off. She grabbed her coat, hesitating. "Colton, I need to check something," she called, stepping outside. He frowned, following her. "Wait up. Where are you going?" She showed him the text. "Mom wouldn't send this. It's weird." His eyes narrowed. "Stay here. I'll go." She shook her head. "No, I'm coming. It's my family." They reached the retreat's back parking lot, a dim stretch of gravel tucked behind the cabins. Rain pattered down, slicking the ground as Nora scanned the shadows. A figure emerged, but it wasn't her mother. Derek Vaughn stepped into the light, his face gaunt, eyes wild. "Nora," he said, voice low. "Didn't expect you to bring company." Colton moved in front of her, tense. "What the hell are you doing here?" Derek sneered, pulling a knife from his jacket. "You took everything from me. The logging deal, my reputation. Now I'm taking her." Nora's breath caught as he lunged, grabbing her arm and yanking her toward a beat-up car. Colton charged, slamming into Derek before the knife could connect. They grappled in the mud, rain blurring the scene as Nora stumbled back, shouting for help. Derek swung wildly, slicing Colton's arm, but Colton landed a punch that sent him reeling. Nora grabbed a rock, hurling it at Derek's head. It struck his temple, and he crumpled, the knife clattering away. Colton pinned him down, breathing hard, blood dripping from his arm. "You okay?" he asked, glancing at Nora. She nodded, shaky but firm. "Yeah. You?" He managed a grin. "Been better." Security from the retreat rushed over, alerted by the noise, and hauled Derek away as he cursed and thrashed. Nora sank to her knees, the adrenaline fading, leaving her cold and trembling. Colton pulled her up, wrapping his good arm around her. "It's over," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. She buried her face in his chest, rain soaking them both, and let the tears come. "I thought he'd kill you," she whispered. He tightened his hold. "Not a chance. I'm not losing you." They stood there clinging to each other, the storm raging around them. Later, at the retreat's infirmary, a medic patched Colton's arm while Nora sat beside him, her hand resting on his. "How'd he even get here?" she asked, voice quiet. Colton shrugged. "Probably Holly tipped him off. She's been gunning for us since day one." Nora nodded, the pieces clicking. Her sister's jealousy had fueled this mess, but Derek's desperation had turned it deadly. "We need to deal with her," she said. Colton squeezed her hand. "We will. Together." The word hung between them, heavier now, and she met his gaze. The contract flashed in her mind, its terms cold and clear: divorce when the company went public. But as he looked at her, eyes soft and fierce, she couldn't imagine walking away. The next day they faced Walter and Marilyn at the retreat, the grand opening hours away. Walter clapped Colton on the shoulder. "You've made me proud, son. Jasper's gone and this place is a gold mine." Marilyn hugged Nora, whispering, "You saved him, dear, more than you know." Nora smiled, but her thoughts churned. After the guests arrived, she pulled Colton aside near the main cabin, the forest stretching out behind them. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady. He tensed, sensing the weight. "About the contract?" She nodded. "It says we divorce when the company goes public." "That's soon, Colton." He stepped closer, his hand finding hers. "Screw the contract. I don't want out, Nora. I never did, not really." Her breath hitched, the words sinking in. "You mean that?" He grinned, that old cocky spark flaring. "Yeah? I've been falling for you since that slap. Took me a while to figure it out." She laughed, a shaky sound, and pulled him into a kiss, fierce and certain. The rain from last night had cleared, leaving a crisp sky above, and the retreat buzzed with life around them. When they broke apart, Nora rested her forehead against his. "No divorce," she said. "Deal's off," he chuckled. "Best deal I ever broke." As the opening ceremony began, they stood hand in hand, facing the crowd. Derek was gone, Jasper exiled, and Holly's schemes had crumbled. The retreat glowed under the Oregon sun, a symbol of what they'd built together. Nora glanced at Colton, his arm bandaged, but his smile wide, and knew they'd face the worst and come out stronger. Whatever came next, they'd handle it as a team, no contracts needed. Nora Bennett stood on the porch of Evergreen Love Retreat, the Oregon sun casting golden streaks through the towering pines. The grand opening had been a success, with guests filling the cabins and the air buzzing with laughter and clinking glasses. Colton Pierce stood beside her, his arm still in a sling from Derek Vaughn's attack the night before, but his grin was as bright as ever. They had faced down Jasper's betrayal and Derek's violence together, and the weight of the contract marriage had finally lifted. As the crowd thinned, Nora leaned into Colton, her hand finding his. "We did it," she said, voice soft. He squeezed her fingers, his eyes warm. "Yeah, we did, and we're not done yet." The next morning they drove to a quiet clearing near the retreat, a spot Nora had picked for a special moment. A photographer waited with a tripod, ready to capture them in front of the evergreen trees that gave the place its name. Nora wore a simple white dress, not quite a wedding gown, but close enough, while Colton cleaned up in a dark jacket, his usual messiness tamed for once. They had never had a real wedding, just the rushed chapel ceremony months ago, and this felt like a do-over. The photographer snapped away as Colton pulled her close, his good arm around her waist. "You're stuck with me now," he murmured, and she laughed, pressing a kiss to his cheek. "Good thing I like you then." Back at the retreat, life settled into a new rhythm. Nora ran the business side, turning the resort into a hotspot for couples seeking romance in the forest. Colton took on the Pierce Company's public listing, working with Lucas Kane to smooth out the details. The stock soared when it hit the market, a triumph that should have triggered their divorce under the old contract. Instead, they celebrated together, clinking glasses in the retreat's lodge, with Marilyn and Walter Pierce looking on. Walter clapped Colton on the shoulder, his gruff voice proud. "You've grown up, boy, and you picked a hell of a woman." Marilyn hugged Nora, whispering, "Your family now, dear. No papers can change that." Holly Bennett's shadow lingered, though. She showed up at the retreat a week later, her face pale and her usual smirk gone. "I messed up," she said, standing in the lobby as Nora sorted paperwork. "Derek's in jail, and I've got nothing left." Nora set the papers down, her expression hard. "You tried to ruin us, Holly. Why should I care?" Holly's eyes welled up, real tears this time. "I was jealous. You always got everything. I'm sorry. Colton walked in, catching the end of it, and crossed his arms. You've got a lot to make up for, he said. Nora sighed, torn between anger and pity. Go home, she told Holly. Figure yourself out. Maybe we'll talk later. Holly nodded, leaving quietly, and Nora leaned against Colton, exhausted. Family's complicated, she muttered. He chuckled. Tell me about it. The Bennetts started to heal too. Nora's parents visited the retreat, their relief palpable now that the logging company was stable thanks to Pierce Investments. Her father pulled her aside, his voice gruff but softer than before. We pushed you too hard, he said, but you saved us. I'm proud of you. Her mother hugged her tight, whispering apologies for the pressure. Nora forgave them, the wounds still there but fading. With Holly out of the picture for now, the family felt lighter, and Nora could breathe easier knowing they were safe. Months later, Nora sat in the retreat's office, a stack of bookings in front of her. The place had become a sensation, its name synonymous with lasting love. She smiled, running a hand over her stomach, a secret she hadn't shared yet. Colton walked in, tossing his keys on the desk. Busy day? He asked, dropping into a chair. She nodded, then took his hand, guiding it to her belly. Busier soon, she said, watching his face. His eyes widened, then lit up with a grin. No way! A kid? She laughed as he pulled her into a hug, careful but tight. Guess we're really stuck together now, he said, voice thick. Wouldn't have it any other way, she replied, kissing him softly. They planned a quiet moment to celebrate just the two of them. That evening they walked to the retreat's edge, where the forest met a small clearing. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Colton wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. This place is ours, he said, his breath warm against her ear. Everything we fought for. Nora turned in his hold, looking up at him. It started with a slap, you know, in that stupid jewelry store. He laughed, the sound rumbling through her. Best hit I ever took. Woke me up. She smiled, tracing his jaw with her fingers. You were a mess back then. Still are sometimes. He smirked, pulling her closer. Yeah, but I'm your mess, and you're mine. They kissed again, slow and sure, the forest whispering around them. The retreat glowed in the distance, its lights twinkling like stars, a testament to what they'd built from chaos. Nora thought back to the contract, the family pressure, the enemies they'd faced. It all led here, to this moment, where love wasn't just a word, but a promise, carved into every tree, every stone of this place. As they stood there, hand in hand, Nora felt their future stretching out ahead, bright and uncharted. The baby would come soon, a new chapter in a story that had defied every odd. Colton squeezed her hand, his voice low. You ever think we'd end up like this? She shook her head, smiling. Not in a million years, but I'm glad we did. He grinned, that old cocky spark flaring. Me too. Now let's go home. We've got a lot to plan. They walked back to the retreat, the sunset fading behind them, leaving only the glow of what they'd made together, unbreakable and evergreen.